Great. All right.
Great. Thank you so much. So good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here with you all for our third meeting, I think it's third, of the bipartisan bicameral broadband caucus. I'm really excited about tonight's guests and presenters discussing the really important issue of digital equity, which if you don't know what that is, you're going to find out. So we're glad you're here. I think we can just start with a quick round of introductions from legislators. If you have a fun fact about your district, feel free to share it. And if you have any particular reasons that you're here, feel free to share them too, so we can make sure that we address them either in this or a future caucus meeting. I would start by saying I'm Nicole Rachowski. I represent 22 towns, most of which are in Hancock County, but one sneaky one is in Knox County. I guess maybe that's the fun fact about my district. Isle Ho is accessible by Hancock County, and yet through some twist of fate, it ended up 2 counties over because the ocean. And I'm just really thrilled for all the topics that we discuss. And I'll kick it over to my co-chair, Representative Jan Dodge.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you guys for being here this evening. My name is Jan Dodge. I represent House District 39, which is the towns of Belfast, Northport, and Belmont. And I guess maybe one of the fun facts is we have a wild history of being a very gritty town, and we've been gentrified. I am involved in this caucus because I am concerned about donut holes and people being left behind and unable to afford broadband. And I will kick it over to, let's see, who do I see to whom I should? Dan, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
I will. Oh,
thank you.
There are two of us on the call.
Oh, it's you, Dan Sayre. Let's go. Woohoo!
Okay, I am Representative Dan Sayre. I represent about 80% of the town of Kennebunk. And fun fact about Kennebunk is it's the only town called Kennebunk in the world. Go figure.
Wow.
I will. I'm a first-term House member. And I will kick it over to Representative Paige Ziegler.
Yes, good evening. And I have to be quick because we're still in committee and I'm the co-chair of the EUT, as Senator Grochowski knows, because she just walked away from the committee too, and we're still going on. And the fun fact is that Lincolnville is the only town named Lincolnville in Waldo County. And but that said, one of the reasons, 2 reasons I'm here tonight, and I would just like to direct those if I could quickly, because I have to go back into committee. One is that I have a placeholder bill, and people have been asking me when I'm going to put the language out, and this is in regards to broadband utility districts. And I would like perhaps Andrew Butcher to address the question that that bill is supposed to fix. And the other one, just quickly, I had a constituent of Representative Dare call me today about Spectrum and that their cost of their bill. Is there anything going on in the Rockport-Rockland area in regards to Spectrum overcharging? Can anybody answer that? Or can anybody get back to me about that? I would appreciate it if they could.
Yes, Kendra Jo and I are both here from MCA, and we will look into whether there's something we should know is going on right there.
Oh, good, because I'm going to give you her phone number at some point.
I would just add, I think that would be great. I do know that Andrew's on, but just so you know, Joe Meadows and the board of directors from the Waldo Broadband Corporation did reach out on your bill, and Andrew has been in touch with them to respond to the questions. And then you can absolutely share with us the contact for the community member. What we know is that Spectrum and other national providers state that they do national pricing, but it is something that we should look into if there's a sense that maybe the pricing is out of sorts with their neighbors, or just too unaffordable, right? We're still trying to get to the root of what affordability really looks like at the individual and statewide level, right? What's affordable in Maine and the cost of living doesn't necessarily mean it's affordable nationwide.
The irony is I pay more for DSL than she does for Spectrum from Consolidated. So nonetheless, and I'm sorry that I have to go back in, but we still are dealing with one last bill of the evening. And again, I'll see everybody either later or I'll see you next meeting. Bye-bye.
Thank you. So I would just say, firstly, thank you to Miles and Joe, especially as employees of the Maine Broadband Coalition, for all your help organizing us. I'm just saying that in part because I am really grateful, and in part because that's my introduction to you. But I'm sure you'll be on later. But I'm really thrilled tonight also that we have a couple great guests to talk to us about the topic of digital equity. We have Susan Corbett, who is with the National Digital Equity Center, doing a lot of really great work. And I think like a longtime leading voice on this topic. Also Maggie Drummond-Ball with Maine Connectivity Authority. And I think they're going to present to us first and then be followed by Dan Cox, who's National Education Manager at T-Mobile for Education. I think that's how we've sorted things out, but I'll let you guys give longer introductions if you like to. And also I'm going to shout out Kendra Joe, who's with Maine Connectivity Authority, and Andrew, who's the head of the Maine Connectivity Authority. And we're glad you two could join as well. And it's a free form situation, so chime in as anyone wants to, but I'll turn it over to Susan and Maggie for starters. Thank you.
Maggie, do you want to kick us off?
Well, I think Susan's actually going to go first tonight.
Okay.
Susan and I, we were like two ships passing in the night, but we thought that Susan could talk a little bit just about what we're talking about when we talk about digital equity and digital inclusion. And Susan, of course, has been the leading partner in Maine for many years, as you noted, Senator, leading this work. So also can show about what she's seen in terms of the needs and some of the things that NDEC has been addressing. And then I thought that I would get into some of the detail about how we're developing our equity plan and what that engagement is, so that you have a sense of just how that structure is coming together in greater detail. So I think if you're for it, Susan, I think you're up first.
I will, and let me go ahead and share screen. You threw a fast one on me. Usually we do the reverse. Maggie goes first, I go second. So, it's okay. We're going to just roll with it. All right. So you can all see the screen right now, I'm hoping. So my name is Susan Corbett. I am the Executive Director of the National Digital Equity Center. The National Digital Equity Center was founded in 2018 to close the digital divide here in the great state of Maine. We've raised about $5 million for Maine and its people to provide free digital skills classes to all Maine residents. They can take as many classes as they wish. And we also manage affordable device programs. We advocate and promote the FCC Affordable Connectivity Program, which is that $30 per month discount for broadband, $75 if you live on tribal land. And then we write digital equity and digital inclusion plans. I am Maggie's co-chair on the Digital Equity Task Force, and I am the consultant for the 13 regional plans that we're in the process of writing across the state that Maggie will talk about. But what exactly are we talking about? So what exactly is digital equity and digital inclusion? So digital equity is the condition in which all individuals and communities have the information capacity needed for full participation in our society, democracy, and economy. So we know when the pandemic hit, we saw how deep the digital divide was in the state. We had students who did not have internet connections and couldn't connect remotely to their teachers at school. Maybe because there wasn't a broadband connection, maybe the family couldn't afford a broadband connection, or maybe there wasn't enough of a broadband connection in the home for everyone to connect for school and work remotely. We also saw the same for a workforce that suddenly had remote workers. Same thing, maybe there wasn't an internet connection, maybe the family couldn't afford it, and maybe there wasn't enough of a broadband connection for everyone to stay connected through video conferencing throughout the day. And then also we had many workers in the field that didn't have devices in order to participate as a remote worker. And then the group that I lost the most sleep over was the older adults across the state who were already battling isolation and loneliness. And then we have a shelter-in-place order. And we had many, many older adults across the state that didn't have an internet connection, didn't have a device, didn't have the skills to know how to connect to their family and friends that were all around the country, as well as connecting to healthcare providers. So we know that digital equity is necessary for civic and cultural participation, employment, lifelong learning, and access to essential services. We achieve digital equity by promoting digital inclusion. So the components of digital inclusion: affordable broadband, affordable equipment, digital skills training, and public computer access. So as we're working with communities across the state and helping them create digital equity plans, they are addressing all of these components and identifying the barriers to affordable broadband and barriers to affordable equipment, the digital skills training, and public computer access. And then part of our work with them is for them to give us recommendations on how can we fix this. And then eventually we'll be able to roll out, we'll have enough funding, hopefully, that we can actually fix all of this. So, so I'm going to stop there. I think that Maggie's going to talk about what's happening across the state and how we're tackling digital equity, and we've had this once in a lifetime opportunity right before us. So take it away, Maggie.
Absolutely. And I'm sure Susan is happy to answer questions as well if you need a minute, if you have any immediate thoughts that you want to jump in with. And I apologize to several folks have alerted me that my internet connection is not very good tonight. There's a lot of demand in this household right now. So I apologize. I'll try to get through this without cutting out too much. I haven't met most of you. My name is Maggie Drummond-Ball. I am the Strategic Partnership Director for MCA. And in that role, I am leading our digital equity planning effort for MCA. Susan is my close partner, obviously co-chairing our digital equity task force. And we're really lucky to have a lot of partners who are helping us through this process, including Maine Broadband Coalition, supporting some of our regional partners in this effort too. So as you heard, I know that you've had presentations from Tanya and from Brian in the previous caucus meetings about how we're doing our BEAD and digital equity planning, that we are combining that process, doing one public engagement process and creating a combined broadband action plan. What that means for the digital equity plan is that we're going to weave our digital equity strategies throughout that plan, but we'll also have the digital equity plan as a standalone document. And we'll be working closely with all of our partners now on the implementation at the point that we can draw down those funds. So I just wanted to give you a little bit more detail about that. I have a couple of slides that may be helpful. And the first is just a reminder, because you probably heard this previously. Nope, that's not the right one. So the covered populations, I think you've probably heard this term. The Digital Equity Act is very specific about what states should be paying attention to in terms of the folks who are most impacted by the digital divide. So our digital equity plan and planning is really focused on these 8 covered populations. We're now starting to call them the important audiences, because this term covered population just is sort of a strange way to refer to actual people and communities. So it is the term that's used in the legislation. So it's low-income households. That definition they're using is up to 150% of the federal poverty rate. Older adults, people who are incarcerated, veterans, individuals with really any kind of disability, individuals with language barriers. And the way they specifically define that in the legislation is folks who are English language learners or folks with low literacy levels, members of racial and ethnic minorities, and people who live in rural areas. And the definition of rural areas that's in the legislation makes it pretty clear that most parts of Maine, with the exception probably of Portland and Bangor and Lewiston, Auburn, will qualify. So the NTIA is estimating that across all of these covered populations, 89% of the Maine population identifies as one or more of these populations. So we know if we really focus in on reaching these folks that are the most impacted, that our plan will be very comprehensive. So that's the structure. We have to focus on these populations as we think about developing our plan. These are the elements of digital inclusion that are laid out in the legislation. So for each of those covered populations, we will be looking at each of these different areas of digital inclusion. So do they have available and affordable access to broadband? Do they have affordable devices, particularly that meet the needs of the user? And do they have technical support if they need it using that device? Digital skills, digital online accessibility and inclusivity of public services. So this is going to be a big one in Maine, right? We know that we have a lot of resources online, but that doesn't mean a lot of folks can access them. And we're really looking at those layers. And internet security. And this is not the language that they use in the legislation. I think they say cybersecurity. But we felt that this overarching language about internet security can capture what we're concerned about. Basically, we're about to put a lot of technology into people's hands at a time when there are a lot of folks trying to take advantage of people in the digital world. So we want to be really aware of that and have plans and address that in our digital equity plan. So the 8 covered populations, these 5 elements of digital inclusion, that is really the structure of the digital equity plan. We have entered that stage of engagement time between February and April. This is when we're really doing outreach and work to get feedback and collect data to inform the development of our digital equity plan. So the Maine Broadband survey is open and live. We've had a really good response so far. You can take it online. You can take it in a hard copy. If you are an organizational partner, you can ask the questions in the survey and enter the answers. So treat it like an interview. We have language translations of that survey coming, I think 12 different languages, and we've been told that those should be ready by the 20th. So things are moving really quickly on the survey side. The survey is basically the most universal tool that we're using to collect information to inform the digital equity plan and the broadband action plan in general. We're also working with our regional and tribal partners and with support from Joe and Miles and the coalition to do community meetings in every region. So we will, but as those dates are being finalized, we're going to keep posting them on that planning page on our website so folks can attend those. And those top 2 opportunities are definitely things that you should let your constituents know about and spread the word with the rest of the legislature as well. We're also doing focus groups specifically with those covered populations. And we're doing that with a facilitator and with the support of our research partner. And that will be one of the ways that we're really getting some specific feedback from those covered populations or important audiences. Our regional and tribal broadband partners are also doing interviews with the coalition partners and organizational partners that they're bringing together in each of their regions. So they, an example would be in Hancock County, the Island Institute is working closely with a whole bunch of partners in a digital inclusion coalition. And they are interviewing those organizations that work with the covered populations to really get additional feedback and recommendations. We will have a plan, a regional plan with Susan's support and facilitation coming in from each of those regions, as well as a tribal digital inclusion plan. And there's a lot of work happening with the tribes individually and collectively. We have done a first pass at a digital equity asset inventory. So this is looking at all those elements of digital inclusion and figuring out what are the assets in our communities and regions and statewide that we can really leverage as we think about this work. We are asking our regional partners and also our statewide digital equity task force partners to help us continue to add to that asset inventory, and it will be live on our website pretty soon, both as a searchable tool and a form where people can add new resources as we identify them. So we expect the asset inventory will be a living document and map, and folks will be able to use that and see it change over time. We're also getting from specific groups. So for example, the telehealth and telemonitoring advisory group, which is tasked by the legislature with figuring out some of the barriers for telehealth and making recommendations. We've asked them to give us the recommendations that they may have for the ways that broadband and digital equity can improve telehealth in Maine. Lots of examples like that. We're also doing formal tribal consultations with the tribal leaders. We had the first one yesterday, and we have 2 more scheduled, and we hope to have all 5 of those completed by the end of the month. And that's really allowing us to think about how our state digital equity planning and broadband planning can help achieve some of the tribal priorities. And then lastly, we're doing some research with our research partner, really figuring out how we can understand the levels of digital equity in Maine. So what are the layers of data that we need to dig into? And as we do that research and analysis, we'll be adding in some of the inputs from our surveys and focus groups and community meetings as well. So really trying to weave together a lot of inputs into this plan. How you can help? I mean, we'd be crazy if we didn't tell you ways that you can help. I already mentioned a couple, just letting your constituents know about the survey and about the community meetings. Helping us if there are organizations in your regions that should be engaged with our regional and tribal partners in those digital inclusion coalitions and be part of that planning. Helpful introductions are really, really great. And then also just taking a look at that digital equity asset inventory when we get it online, or we can share the report that we have now so that you can let us know about other assets that we're missing and that need to be added in there. And then of course, tell us your ideas. We are open right now is the moment. We want to hear from everybody as much as possible throughout this process. So I will stop there. Sorry that it took so long. And we are, of course, happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. I didn't think that took too long. I thought it was very important information. I don't know, Jan or Dan or anyone else, if you have any questions. I do have one to kick us off, maybe. I think, so what I love about here's things you can do to help is it's actionable for us, and it's things that we can share with our colleagues. But it seems like there's almost kind of 2 different things. One might be public communications that we all engage in, through our email lists and Facebook and things to the broad public. And I think do you agree, is the broadband survey something that's helpful for us to include in our e-blasts? And okay. And how long is that open for?
We are going to keep it open until April 14th. But we also were thinking we may continue to collect responses after that. That's just sort of the first moment that we'll analyze that data to help inform the regional plans that are due at the end of the month. And then we'll do additional analysis later as more responses are coming in. But April 14th is a really good date to keep in mind.
Okay, so with that in mind, if we could ask you to help us help others.
Help us help
Like
you.
if there's like a paragraph, any kind of graphic that might already exist, because you know, we can work with our communication staff so that it's not just going out in my email, but that it goes out, you know, to every senator that's sending out an email to their district lists, you know, over the next couple of weeks. And it's nice that we have a little bit of time there, because sometimes I find out stuff and I'm like, oh, I don't want to send that out because it's like tomorrow's the deadline and people are going to be frustrated at me. But this one, I feel like we have a good amount of lead time on. So if you could help us with that, then we can work to propagate it. And then my second question was, the other aspect is, or at least one other aspect that I heard was, you know, are there groups that should be engaged with those different, I don't know what you call them, guiding entities? In the case of Hancock County, I know it's Island Institute. Is there, like, are there lists of who's currently engaged? How would we, if we wanted to look at that, how would we see what the gaps are? And I don't think that's something that every legislator would take the time to do, just because we have many things demanding our time. But for those of us really engaged on this issue, they might be interested to see, because like today I just had a broadband committee reach out to me, and I was super glad because I saw like they're already working with the Island Institute. They said they've been watching these meetings and attending other meetings. So I think I can just say to them, you're doing the right thing. But you know, what if the next town over hasn't made that connection yet? I would want to make sure that there isn't a gap there if I see it. So long-winded way to ask, like, are there lists of by region who's already engaged?
And
Yeah.
to piggyback off that, well, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say the digital inclusion partners, the regional partners, have been launching those coalitions over the past few weeks. I think Susan and I have done 12 different kickoff meetings. So though I wouldn't say those lists are quite ready to post yet, but I'm sure they will be soon. In the meantime, can certainly send any organizational partners who are interested in connecting to that regional and tribal broadband partners page of our website where they're all listed, because that just gives them, okay, I'm in Hancock County, so I'm going to get in touch with the Island Institute. They can also just contact me directly, because I can introduce them, you know, warmly introduce them to a person, and I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, and I would just add that the regional and tribal broadband partners would welcome anyone coming forth and saying, you know, I'd like to know what you're doing. Is there any way we can help? Can we get your message out? So by all means, anyone can get in touch with us for the contacts for those regional and tribal broadband partners, and we're happy to connect you.
And further on the regional situation, for the events that are being scheduled, for example, I included the broadband and brews little blip in my constant contact email that was sent out a couple of days ago. But how can we connect legislators with the appropriate area information so that they can share that and invite their constituents to attend if they have interest?
Representative Dodge, I can answer that one. So we have a near final schedule for most of the community meetings, and we'll be in touch with both this caucus and anybody who's come to a caucus event, but we'll also directly send the invites to events in those regions to the representatives and senators who represent those regions.
Perfect.
So you don't
Great. Awesome.
And apropos of this, I was just talking with some folks who are helping us with the Broadband and Brews event, and we are going to have these questions available there. So we are going to be able to get input on the broadband action plan at that event. We're just going to set it up as like an activity you can do in between your beer, and that'll be in the invite that you all get tomorrow.
So the most creative ideas are going to come out of that.
Depends on the time that they're
That's what I'm
submitted. The
hearing.
4 o'clock ideas kind of
Mhm.
anodyne. The 6 o'clock ideas will be very interesting.
I will also say, just on that plan, on the BAP planning page on the MCA website, there is a calendar, and Miles and Joe have access to that calendar. So as they're scheduling these community meetings, they're going to be populating into that calendar as well. So you can always send people to the general resource.
That's great. And I'm looking forward to my invite to whatever party is coming to Hancock County. Though I was looking to crash the Waldo County one on my drive home, maybe.
Senator Grohowski, I can assure you that there is one in the planning in Hancock County. You will not be overlooked.
Great. I just want to recognize Representative Grayson Lookner has joined us. Hi, Grayson. If you want to introduce yourself, you're welcome to, or you can stay on mute if you've got other things going on. We recognize it as the dinner hour, but we are glad you were here. Further questions? I mean, we can come back to questions for Maggie and Susan, but any further questions before we turn it over to Dan? Great. All right, Dan, we are interested to hear what you have to say about your efforts and private sector, at large, the extent that you feel you can comment on that, on this work. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I trust everyone can hear me just fine. I have to say, I love the last presentation. To see what's going on in the state of Maine in regards to digital equity is inspiring. So a little background, I've been working in this space for about 9 years now. I'm a Maine native. I left in 1999, regretfully, but came back in 2019. I'm in Senator Grohowski's region, and we met at an event a few months ago, I think. And I feel late to the party because I will tell you, so for the last 9 years, I've been working on first Sprint's Connect That initiative that we did in partnership with President Obama, where we connected 50,000 students with free connectivity. And my first experience was at Glades Elementary School in Miami. I was living in South Florida at the time. And I met so many families and students, and the reality of the lack of connectivity struck me. And from that point on, I was like, I've got to do this work. I understood what it was like to not have a lot growing up. I think any of us who grew up here can understand that. And seeing how much of a disparity that there was for minority students as opposed to their peers was jarring. So fast forward to 2016, Sprint started the 1 Million project. I ran that for Sprint, and we connected over 600,000 students. And now I run Project 10 Million for T-Mobile, which is an initiative to connect 10 million K-12 students, households with connectivity. I do have a presentation, but I wanted to kind of see all your faces first before I dove into it. And I will tell you, I want to work here. We are miserably underrepresented in Maine right now. I think a lot of people don't know about T-Mobile as a network. It's a very strong network here in Maine. I live in Lemoyne, as I said before, which is, a little podunk town in Hancock County, and it has incredibly good service. When I was with Sprint, it wasn't so good. But by the way, too, there's no party like a Hancock County party. I'm thinking of the pit parties when I was in high school in Lemoyne, as a matter of fact. But regardless, let me kind of jump into the presentation. I want to share with you some of the work that we've been doing. And I also want to share with you what we're not doing in Maine. And I would love to get plugged in where I can to make sure that we can provide. We have free internet, free hotspots. We also have deeply discounted rates for unlimited internet. Let me just get into it here. Okay. Fantastic. All right. We know when we started this program in 2020, about 10 million households with students in the country lacked high-speed connectivity. I think we all understand there's a huge need here. We have some great programs with ACP, which I'm very strongly in favor of. To date at T-Mobile, we've connected over 5 million students over the last few years. But I think we all know there's still a huge lack of connectivity and equity issue when it comes to connectivity across the country. Obviously, our mission, Project 10 Million, connect 10 million households that don't have reliable or affordable high-speed connectivity. We do this, our program is simple. We provide a free hotspot, 100 gigabytes of data for a year for free. There's no upcharge if they go over, it just stops working. And we also have deeply discounted rates for school districts if they'd like to get unlimited data. And it's something we're doing really well with. Again, we've connected over 5 million students over the last few years in our programs. And I'm going to get to the main part here in a second, but want to go over the benefits again. Eligible participating students, which just means a student household on free and reduced lunch, gets free high-speed data and a free hotspot device. We do have low-cost tablets that we can provide as well. Wireless service for up to 5 years and 100 gigs per year, as well as education-grade content filtering, or for those of you familiar with SIPA, our filtering works in tandem with schools' efforts on SIPA filtering. Here's the sort of crazy stats. And I talked about this with Nicole a little bit when we talked a few months ago. I've been in every huge district across the country. I've spent tons of time in New York, Chicago, LA, Miami, and everywhere in between. Smallest districts in the country as well. For instance, we're working in Indian Island schools, which I'm very proud of, in Old Town. And we're in over 5,000 districts across the country out of the 13,000 districts, but we're only in 17 in Maine. So it's a lot of work to do. A lot of work to do here. I think we could reach a lot more students. I really don't care what students use, what schools use, if they've got Verizon, if they've got US Cellular. I just want the kids to be connected, frankly. So I'm sure a lot of these districts are using other carriers, but we do have a great program here that districts can avail themselves of. And engagement's really simple. We have a landing page, tmobile.com/P10M. A school can go there and fill out an interest form, which comes to my team. And we set up an interview and talk about the needs, or a simple email to me. And if it's close enough, I'll even jump in the car and drive over. But in all seriousness, we're very excited about the work that's happening here. I can't believe so much is being done in this space in the state, and I want to help.
Thank you so much for sharing that perspective. I think I'm so focused sometimes on what we're doing in government that I'm not always as attuned to all the other people that are trying to solve this problem. And I appreciate that, T-Mobile and many others in the private sector are working on this. One of the questions that I have, and then I'll see if others have questions, is what is, I don't know how long this program's been going on for, but like, what is the experience? It seems like, if a household gets this and their students are able to use it, that's great. They maybe get through other digital divide issues that they're having. But then what happens, 3 or 5 or however many years down the road where their household is no longer accessible? What's the ramp? Like, is there a cliff?
Yeah,
or
it's
transition?
a great question. Was there kind of a follow-up on that too? Did I hear?
No, just what happens? Like 5 years is awesome. Like that's so much better than 0 years, but you can get a real dependency in a way that isn't maybe a bad thing, but
sure. So we do have affordable programs through what we call assurance. And it's interesting you asked this, because this program, Project 10 Million, is only about 2.5 years old. So we haven't aged to 5 years yet, but I ran the 1 million project at Sprint, and we did finish and complete that project in 2020. And what we did, Nicole, there was, do people usually call you Senator Grohowski?
I don't care.
I'm calling you by Is that okay?
Doesn't matter to me.
I work with a lot of doctors, and I'm like, I'm never really sure what to do. So let me continue. I'll always call Dr. King, though, by the way. So when we took people off of the 1 million project, we literally brought them on to Project 10 Million at T-Mobile. And when I talk about 5 years too, so what's going to happen is we'll implement this program into 2025. And then any student we sign up in 2025 will have 5 years. So essentially this program is going to go to 2030. But yeah, we absolutely have other very affordable programs, not free. So it's a great question, but no one will start getting charged if that's a question either. That won't happen.
Great, thank you. I see Andrew Butcher, you have your hand up.
Yes, hi. Thanks so much.
Hey.
I'm sorry to be largely off video. Ooh,
That van was inspiring, I'm not gonna lie.
that's Buttercup,
Oh.
and I'm happy to introduce you sometime soon. I'm amidst juggling kids karate practice and dinner, so I apologize for being largely off video. Mr. Cox, so nice to make your acquaintance. I'm really glad that you are here. I serve as president of the Maine Connectivity Authority, and I just would welcome more information now or later just regarding some of the work that you are doing with school districts. It would be great to better understand what that specifically looks like and what even some of the cost modeling is. And also I did just want to highlight, recognizing that non-wired solutions are one strategy that we need to layer into our state connectivity solutions. We have launched a program called Jumpstart Connectivity, which we've piloted to evaluate 3 different types of wireless solutions in 3 different regions to evaluate constraints, effectiveness, speed to market. And I think as you probably well know, the majority of our resources in the state need to be allocated to performance standards that largely meet fixed line fiber solutions. However, we have a big problem to solve. We have a general ethos that all solutions are on the table. And it's really exciting to hear about your growing presence in Maine. And I just wanted to invite you to connect more directly to talk about how we can better identify ways to incorporate more of your work.
It's a great question, and I think I'm going to talk to you about work I do in another state specifically. So I work really closely with the Public Utilities Commission in California, and they have an organization called California Emerging Technology Fund. And I work with this woman, Sunny McPeak, who is one of the most powerful women in California and in the country. Incredible woman that I hope to be doing what she's doing in 20 years and that passionate. But what we do there is they have a really deep digital literacy program called School to Home, where they go into schools and any student that gets a connection gets training on digital citizenship, digital tools, a lot of things that Susan and Maggie talked about earlier that are so important. As a matter of fact, I call it the existential crisis of the digital divide, which is literacy, digital literacy. It's not connectivity, in my opinion, because I think we're getting close to solving connectivity across the country. Maybe not in Maine, but by and large across the country we have. So what we do there, Andy, is I work with her. For instance, we're working in several districts in San Jose right now. I'll be going out in April to talk there. I was at an event a few months ago at Ida Jew Academy, which is part of Mount Pleasant Elementary. And we signed up 900 parents in households with connectivity there. And again, they'll get the T-Mobile hotspots, which is pretty basic, right? Hotspot. And then they're getting a device from the school and getting that training. So I'm saying all that to say there are a lot of things we can do. You could boil it down and say all that we're doing really is providing connectivity. But we do also work very much with CBOs and other organizations because we can't do it alone, frankly. So as far as cost modeling, I can absolutely send you some things. Again, we have a 100% free part. A lot of schools are just doing free hotspots, 300 gigabytes of data a year. To me, I would rather see a student have unlimited data. And if I was running the program 100%, it would be all free. But whatever, I don't know if that's helpful to give you a little picture of what we do. You're on mute.
Thanks. Helpful first step. Definitely eager to hear more about that, to understand what the school districts look like. As you know, there's a pretty extensive network that engages with school districts. It would be helpful as a part of the digital equity work to understand where and how to target those kinds of resources. I think that's actually one of the biggest outcomes of our planning process is the ability to proactively be intentional around deploying the types of services and technology that you all utilize as a first step on the road of connectivity and digital equity. So definitely one more great piece of evidence of the value and utility of the Broadband Caucus. So really nice to connect here, and I'll put my contact information in the chat and welcome you to either with Maggie and Kendra Jo and or other team members as well as relevant. So thanks for the time here. I will apologize. I am actually now in karate pickup mode. So I will be going back on mute and video, but grateful to listen.
Thanks for the questions. Anybody else? I do want to say too that I talked mainly about our relationship with school districts. And we're working, just to give you a quick smattering, we're working right now in Auburn School District, Blue Hill, Haystack in Stonington, which is our Deer Isle, which is incredible. Indian Island School, we're in Portland as well. But I'm really annoyed that we're not in Ellsworth because I graduated from Ellsworth High School, and it just frustrates me really badly that we're not there. But that's okay. But the other part though is that any parent or guardian can also sign up for this program 100% for free just by navigating to the website. So I'll share the deck after the call, as well as a flyer I have that anyone could disseminate to any family in need. They don't have to go through me. They don't have to go through their school district. They can just go on the website and get a hotspot shipped to their house entirely free. So any other questions or comments? And again, I want to help. I'd love to get plugged in more. Use me, please.
Dan, I did put in the chat, but it would be very helpful to have your program in the digital equity asset inventory, because we do have this vision that it will be a dynamic tool with, a map so that you can see the resources in a place-based way, but you can also search for specific resources, either for specific types of support, like a device or hotspot, or digital skills, or you can search for programs that serve a particular population or audience. So I can send you the spreadsheet where we're collecting that information, and we'll be working to get it set up. I would say that, as I mentioned before, will be a living, working, breathing thing that we'll have to devote a lot of time to over the next few years, and probably forever. But it does not currently have a lot of private sector assets in it. And so I think that needs to be a focus in this next phase for sure.
Can I ask a question? Because I'm connected with lots of national CBOs. Is anyone here working with Education Superhighway? Just because I recently spoke with them.
Yeah, so we're working with them in two ways. They're supporting us in our launching of the ACP, of the Affordable Connectivity Program, state branded campaign. So we'll be using their mobile friendly website. We're working right now on the back end of that, so to get the right plans in there and also go through the process of the eligibility checklists. One of our challenges right now, which I think is challenged nationwide, is to ensure that tool that tool also includes the tribal benefit.
Yes.
Which has been a little bit of a challenge. There's some issues around tribal enrollment. We're also working with them on the affordable housing side of our work. So as you may know, there's potential to use BEAD funding to support connectivity in affordable housing developments. That's also a focus on our digital equity side of things. So they're providing data for us around the potentially BEAD eligible affordable housing units in Maine. And then we'll be doing work together to do outreach to those property owners and resident services directors, so we can better understand what's going on in those buildings.
That's great. I'm really excited to hear that. I've admired Education Superhighway for years. They've been working on the digital divide since 2008. So that's great. Great.
Yeah.
They have a lot of good resources. They're a small group, but do huge work. So awesome.
So helpful.
Any
I would say one of the few consultants, now that all this broadband work is happening, one of the few partners that's not charging anybody for their work. They're like, states, we will help you.
Yeah. Well, I know their director of government affairs who handles state, that I'm assuming you're working with, and she's a fantastic person. So that's really cool. Thank you again for having me. It was cool to be here, and hopefully we'll do some more work together, or some work together at all would be great.
Yeah, I'm really glad that that you came on short notice, and that I mean, I think part of the value of meetings like this is that we make connections where maybe we hadn't, but great things can come out of it. So
This was all you. This was all you.
I will take full credit for when everyone is connected in the state with internet of one form or another. It'll be all me for sure. I can say that because Senator Bennett's not here, who created the Connectivity Authority. I guess just any other questions for our presenters this evening? I think we have a lot of good things to work on and stew on. The next thing on our agenda, we only have a couple minutes left, but we had saved a little time for discussion of bills related to broadband. I don't know if any of our organizational partners have updates they want to share. I'll just say that I have two bills. One has to do with basically if municipalities can get the right insurance protections if they want to connect to poles that are owned by other companies. That's a really bad way to explain that probably, but it's a liability issue. And the second one is just a lot about, well, it's more about poles, but neither of them have been, I haven't even seen a first draft. So there's not like a lot of point in discussing them because there's no language yet or places to point people to, but I don't know, Miles or anyone from the Connectivity Authority, if there are any bills that you've seen come out or that you're looking to find that you have any updates on.
I mean, I think in addition to the two that you mentioned, Senator Grochowski, there was the one question from Representative Ziegler at the top of the meeting. Andrew has left. I'm not sure, Andrew, Joe, or Maggie, if you have anything you can say to respond to that.
Broadband utility districts.
Right. It's financing.
I have nothing I can contribute on that, which I'm willing to be really honest about. Although Ken or Joe may, and we can certainly circle back with Andrew.
No, I think what I said at the beginning kind of sticks. We are having, we received an email from Water Broadband Corporation in particular on this, and we have a strategic meeting on this Friday as a team to kind of work through some of it, as well as a meeting with them specifically next week around their project, as well as a pilot financing model that we're working through with the Finance Authority of Maine. So I did flag for Andrew to pull in Representative Ziegler on that response to the community members that emailed us. I don't think he might have been, but I don't know that he was included. So I want to make sure that he is hearing the exact same thing across the board. And yeah.
I think Ken or Joe, maybe to just for the folks who might watch later or watching the live stream, just to explain that the problem here is kind of a gap that towns that band together to try to bring in investment in their broadband districts and try to get a grant for that purpose also need to pull some credit in order to pay for their share of the project, but they also don't want to have the town's taxpayers on the hook for that credit if their project doesn't pan out financially. And that creates a problem of who is going to hold that risk. And there's several different angles to try to solve that. And my understanding is that you folks are working with Finance Authority of Maine to try to come up with a solution. And if that doesn't work, then potentially Representative Ziegler's vehicle for a legislative fix may come into play, but we haven't gotten to that stage yet. Is that all?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a moment in time where the broadband space is definitely supportive of a model. We've seen utility districts stand up in Maine prior, but typically with connected to communities and with town backing. And so, this is a moment in time where even though in the broadband space we might be supportive and progressive in this particular ownership model, we need the financial sector to also be where we need them, right? And there hasn't much changed in that sector as much as there has been in the broadband side. We've evolved a lot in the last honestly 6 months, let alone the last 3 years. So working with our partners at the Finance Authority of Maine, and Carlos Mello is on our board of directors as well. So having that opportunity to build and pilot and pull in particularly this utility that's active right now and was not awarded through our Connect the Ready program, to give us feedback because they're in the process as we speak, right? And so to be able to stand up and pilot something and see if we can bring that financial sector up to speed. We also have a capital markets task force that has pulled together a lot of financial sectors or financial leaders across the state to start to dig into this as well, as we see more ownership models and more opportunities for innovative investing in this space. We know that the funding that's coming into the Maine Connectivity Authority will do a lot of good to progress our goals and connect all of Mainers. We know that it's not enough to get us all the way there, especially when we look at the state's definitions and the state's goals, comparison to nationwide. So the more we can bring in other vehicles for financing, the better, and bring them along in this process. Thank you.
Great, thank you for an overview of that effort. I think we're good because Jan, you get feedback all the time about future broadband caucus meetings, and Rep. Sayer, you are welcome to give us feedback anytime as well. If you have any specific things that you would like to see us cover, feel free, in future meetings, feel free to let us know that now or in the future. There you are.
Yeah, no, I know I've been quiet and hidden
No,
during this meeting.
great.
Lot of feline activity in my immediate vicinity. So I have just been listening because I'm down here in Kennebunk, which is a better served region of the state by far. I haven't attended prior meetings of this, so I was really just getting myself up to speed. Very impressed to hear from Dan and the others with the things that are being done. And I serve on the IDEA Business Committee and am aware of the critical need for good connectivity throughout the state for small businesses and for people who work remotely for businesses outside the state. So it's just good to be getting caught up, and thank you for this forum.
Yeah, I'm glad you could join. And if you have ideas for helpful topics, let us know. I think great thing about a topic like what we covered tonight is that no matter what your level of connectivity, there may still be, that's happening outside your house, there may still be access issues or literacy issues. And it's, I think, good that we have been, and the federal government is encouraging us to think about those things beyond just the wires and signals through the air. So great topic. Tell your friends that they should watch the recording or reach out to all these fabulous organizations and partners that we have. So with that, I'll conclude the meeting right on time. Oh, it just turned to 7:01. I'm sorry. But pretty good. Glad to be with you all, and have a great evening.
See you in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.